of the things that I love about being an animist is being so conscious and aware of all the ways that we are so wonderfully supported by nature. Today, I want to introduce you to Carmen Theobald. Carmen is a trauma survivor and founder of Horse Sense North. She has used her experiences and recovery story to bring compassion and healing to others through the magic of horses. I can't wait for you to hear her story, and I thank you all for being here. I'm Laura Giles, your host of Modern Animism Radio. The show is free to listen to, but not to produce, so if you're a fan and you'd like to support, please comment, share, review, or donate at buymeacoffee.com/ it's not you, it's me to help us create inspiring and educational animist content. Thanks. And I'd like to give back to the elements that give us life. So I acknowledge the element of earth. Thank you for the ground beneath our feet, the fertile land that gives us food, our healthy bodies, qualities like tenacity, beauty, and abundance that support our life here in the physical. I acknowledge the element of air and give gratitude for the air that we breathe, ideas, creativity, inspiration, and communication, and the return of spring. I acknowledge the element of fire and give gratitude for the passion, responsibility, will, warmth, and transformative energy that makes life possible and fun. I acknowledge the element of water and give gratitude for the example to flow with whatever life brings and be resilient. Thank you for your nurturing, your receptive and deep energy. Thank you, water. I acknowledge the plant, animal, mineral, ancestral, and spirit realms. You complete me, and I'm grateful for you. And I'm grateful to you, all the listeners around the world, for tuning in. And without further ado, let's get to our guest, Carmen Theobald. Welcome, Carmen. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm thrilled to be here.
Now, I know that you didn't have a linear path in life, and I didn't either. And a lot of people I think they think it means that we're not on track or that we're falling behind. I know that I had that people were projecting that on me and can see that as failing. So how did your nonlinear path actually set you up for success?
That is a wonderful question, and for so many reasons for me. I think in part society and our families and culture and everything that we grow up in can have such a rigid view of what it means to be successful, of what
Yeah,
it means to be healthy. And so often that really misses the mark for what's true on the inside for us as individuals and as human beings instead of human doings. And so, yeah, so for me, it's definitely been a winding path. I started out in Montreal and I was going to school studying social services at Dawson College. And I ended up taking a complete change of direction because of some events that took place. And I don't know how much of this you want me to disclose because I know that sometimes there can be a little bit of an activation connected to this story. So do you want me to kind of go into this part, Laura, or?
I think, yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So just for the listeners, of course, just to take care of yourselves as need be. So while I was at Dawson College, there was a school shooting that took place. And luckily for me, I am here today. I am alive. And I was also not in the worst of it. I want to make that clear. And I was hiding in a classroom for 45 minutes, hearing the shooter getting closer and closer to where we were.
Wow.
I would not be alive today without the incredible work that first responders do every day, and especially the police officers who came in to escort us out secretly and safely. I really can't explain to the full depth of what it was like to step outside and have the sunshine on my face in that moment, just minutes after I truly believed that that was the end of my life.
Yeah.
And so having that kind of moment of recognizing that I really was alive and hey, if life can be taken away and be so short, which I knew cognitively, I knew in my mind, but there's a very different feeling of that when it's deep viscerally in the body.
Sure.
So when I really deeply felt that in my body, it's like it turned down the volume on all of the pressures and doubts and expectations of what a linear life path was holding over me. And it allowed me to really get a lot more clear and connected to my heart and find the courage to take the next steps, moving into a life that I didn't have a roadmap for, that really looked nothing like anything I'd ever heard of, but that was just calling to me one step at a time, not knowing where it was going to end up, still not knowing where it's going to end up,
Sure.
but being a lot more okay with that and allowing me to really kind of claim my life as my own. So I ended up it didn't happen instantaneously, but it built over time. And it really was, of course, that pivotal moment that allowed me to kind of dial up the volume on my inner true self. And what my heart was telling me was that I didn't want to be in school anymore. Not only because of that event, of course, it played a part, but there was that part of me that had been already yearning for more and something very different for a long time before
Mm,
that. And that was to get out of the city, to get out of a family
mm.
environment that was not healthy for me, and to be closer to nature. So I ended up going to volunteer in exchange for room and board on this farm. And I thought I was going to be there 2 weeks. I ended up being there almost 2 years. And I ended up getting an apprenticeship from that as a farrier. So I learned how to take care of horses' hooves. So I became a professional foot doctor for them without the PhD or medical aspect of the licensure, but nonetheless taking care of their medical needs for their feet. And that's kind of like a blacksmith for those who may not know. Like I can make shoes, metal shoes, but I'm also doing all kinds of different hoof care things for them. And working with them in that intensive way continued to really teach me so much about myself, so much about relationships with others. Horses are just such incredible mirrors for what's going on internally at a visceral nervous system level and inviting me to show up better and better in the world, in my life, for them, for myself, for everyone. And so I've now worked with thousands of horses in this way.
Wow.
They've been hands down my best teachers and sometimes school of hard knocks education because that kind of work is very intense, right? I'm putting their leg between mine. I am
Mhm.
working very closely, intensively, very often with horses who do not want their feet done. Just like us as humans, we might be coming with our own, painful experiences, traumatic backgrounds, feeling unsafe in our environment, experiencing physical pain. It's also a physical job and physical for them to lift their leg, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that has just played such a huge role and kind of brought me back around to my roots in social services, where I wanted to learn how to become a bridge builder between the worlds of horses and humans so that others could have safe experiences with horses that would really help them step more fully into who they are as well.
I love that. So it's been like 5 minutes and we've covered so much ground already. And I think that in that 5 minutes, what I heard is, and that I'm repeating this because I want the audience to hear it too, just in case they heard something different, um, is that so I'm a trauma therapist, and one of the first things that I do in an intake is, um, well, we get some history and things like this, and then there's like uh, clues or some things that make us think, okay, so there's some trauma here, and then you kind of assess for that. And one of the instruments that we use is ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences. And we think that if you have this childhood that has all these things in it, and you kind of you specifically mentioned some, but you kind of alluded to others, it there's this thought in the professional world that, okay, you are set up for a bad adulthood, and it can seem like it's insurmountable. But what I heard you say was that it's absolutely not. So you said it didn't happen over, immediately. Can you talk a little bit more about what that in between was like?
For sure. Um, so I think the in between looked a lot like recognizing when a question was asked that the standard answer I might have no longer applied,
Hmm.
that I suddenly had more space to actually answer honestly to myself first,
Oh.
never mind to others.
Hmm.
Um, it looked like when I had opportunities presented to me that I didn't have the same kind of holding back need to feel small, need to feel like I'm trying to be good enough, need to feel like I'm trying to fit into a certain box or category or approval, because the sense of aliveness was more important than abandoning that and kind of giving part of that feeling of really belonging to myself away.
Hmm.
And so all these different things that were happening around me in little moments were contributing to this bigger picture of me validating what was happening on the inside and really trying to hold very protectively, carefully, and lovingly this part of myself that was like, this is my life. So if this is my life, what does that now give me permission to do with it? And there was just so many little moments that built on top of each other, to continue to add to that sense. And then I was asked by my dear friend at the time, who's now my husband, if I wanted to go traveling. And we had already been talking a lot about that, kind of theoretically daydreaming. And then he's like, well, you want to just do it? And I was like, yes. And that meant quitting school, right? And that's a
Ah,
huge piece for me because I grew up deeply valuing education myself. I love learning, and I love having opportunities to develop. And it was also coming from a very huge family value of getting a degree and doing all these things, and for me to be able to answer in that moment, yes, with all of what that meant around it, which also not only meant leaving school, but it meant having major disruptive
mm,
relationships with my family, my parents in
mm.
particular, right? Having people thinking that I'm like losing my mind, that I'm failing them, that I'm disappointing them, that I'm not living up to their standards, that I'm ruining my life at 18 years old, right? Like, my life will never recover if I leave school, like all those kinds of things. And again, I'm not disvaluing education for those of you who want to get those degrees and that's the right path. And I actually thought that maybe I'd go back. I didn't end up doing that,
Mm.
but I got a horse PhD instead. Um, in their eyes anyway. Still learning always.
Yeah, yeah,
But I had to really kind of grow that sense of who I was and protecting that sense of the the life really being my own, my ownership of my own life,
hmm,
so that though all those little pieces, all those expectations, all those big pieces too, the fights, the yelling, the telling me that I wasn't going to,
mm,
do whatever, that I wasn't good enough, basically, with the choices I was making, focusing so much on what I was doing instead of who I was, and honoring
right,
that, I had to really honor who I was.
yeah,
And I wouldn't say that it's like instant, like switching on a light flip, or a light switch rather. In a sense, there is of that moment, but it required all those little moments continuing to build
yeah,
that courage to make those choices moving forward.
yeah.
And when I did move forward and make that huge life change and get on a bus and go to this farm that I knew nothing about, work with all these horses that I knew nothing about, um, the horses kept reminding me to come back to that place because I think it can be really easy to kind of get there and then
Yeah,
get scared again. And that's really fair because I don't think the world and our society is set up to really support that. And the
totally.
horses keep me going in that way because they're only going to respond to me with connection and and safety in their behavior if I'm showing up authentically. And to show up authentically with them, I have to be connected to that true self place. So they keep inviting me to go back there, keep inviting me to strengthen that muscle, so to speak.
I think that is the juiciest piece of equine therapy. Um, because I think because they're natural. So I've never done it, so I'm speculating. So feel free to correct me. But because they're natural creatures and they don't have the socialization that we have, and they work as a herd, so they can only um, they need to connect with each other in order to stay safe because they're prey animals. So they need to rely on each other. And if you're the one that's like being not in that space, then it can be really crazy for them to try to negotiate with you. So can you talk more about that and how that makes them really great therapists?
Absolutely. So just to kind of circle back, and I'll come to your question in a second. when I did decide to become a bridge builder in a way, or try to at least, between the worlds of horses and humans, that's what created Horse Sense North. So I'm now the founder and director of Horse Sense North. And we work with other horses, not just on our farm. Sometimes I'll go to other places, but we mostly work with our herd here, which I love so much because we really know them and we
Hmm.
have very healthy, safe interactions and relationships with them. And I think that's important to mention because it's not just like you can go and be with a horse, although that is very therapeutic. It's not to say you can't do that, but every horse is also coming with their own story.
Sure.
So every horse that we have working with clients here, it's so important that they've also been supported to do their own healing, that they've also been supported to do their own, development of coping skills, of regulation tools, so that they can truly show up with people who don't know anything about horses. And even if they do know something about horses, where they're showing up very vulnerably in that moment, and the horses can actually step in as a teacher and a guide. So I think they can always present us that opportunity, but we want to make sure it's within a safe container.
Hmm.
And sometimes, for example, in my farrier work, I'm working with horses who I'm learning from, but it can be in really intensive and dangerous ways, to be honest. My insurance rates for farrier work are the same as military because the risk is so high. Yeah. Yeah. Now, that's not the case for, of course, this kind of work because it is a very different environment. And we're also working with the horses at liberty. So the horse has their full voice and choice in how they are interacting with us. There's different modalities of horse therapy. There's like different distant cousins of each other, different approaches. Some of them have the horses on a lead. Sometimes people are riding,
Yeah.
so there's lots of different aspects of the work. So I just want to make that clear because what I'm going to share connected to your specific question really applies to the kind that we do.
Hmm.
Um, so when we give horses that autonomy to feel empowered themselves in their relationship and interactions with us, where we're not using power over techniques with them, we're not using coercion techniques with them, or we're
Hmm.
really saying, hello, would you like to be in relationship with me? And what does that relationship look like? And can we make it really mutually respectful, safe, and connected? And when we kind of open that door to having authentic responses from them, we get their beautiful and also um, sometimes challenging opinion. But it's not just an opinion; it's really a non-judgmental approach to who we are, where they're going to be totally honest and ready to share that honesty with us every moment. And every moment is a new opportunity. So I show up with a mask on, they're going to be totally honest and say, I don't feel you right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to allow myself to be close to you because you actually represent a threat in a way because there's something hidden and I don't know what that hidden agenda is. And so I'm going to protect myself because you don't feel so safe anymore. Versus if I take that mask off, even if it has big emotion, they're like, oh, I get that. No worries. And that can happen 1 second to the next. So it's not like I show up with a mask on and I do have some kind of like hidden agenda, which could be, I really want you to like me, which could be, I actually really want to be in control right now, which could be, um, I just really don't like myself, but I'm trying to present in a way that all is well, but I'm actually functioning from this place of I am not well. So the inside is not matching the outside, right? And so they're going to respond to me authentically in that, but not judging, not shaming, and so fast to right away recognize when I kind of drop some of that armor and show up with more vulnerability. And instantly they're like, oh, there you are. There you are. And I'm ready to connect with you now because that was last moment and this is this moment. And now you feel safe. And now you feel like someone I can connect to. And even with big emotion, and this is where I think it's really important to have horses who've done their own healing work, I can actually show up for you in those big emotions and help you feel seen, heard, safe, and like you belong.
Now, I've seen that a lot of people who have the type of businesses that you have use rescue horses. Is there a reason for that?
I think there's a few reasons, and we have some horses here who are rescues or have had significant traumatic backgrounds. Not
Hmm.
all of them, but some. Um, I'll give you the like really jaded horse person answer, and then I'll give you the more hopeful one that I think is also true for many. So the bit of a jaded answer is that sometimes this is an unregulated field, and it is very costly
Okay.
to do this work because horses are very expensive to keep, and you need a situation with lots of land and a space to do the work, etc., etc. So rescue horses are often free or very cheap.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes there are people in the horse world who feel like they can navigate those dynamics of helping a rescue horse become a partner in this work, and it's actually not a healthy or safe situation.
Yeah.
It's not to say rescue horses shouldn't be part of this work. I just want to put that out there because if people are considering any kind of equine therapy or wellness experience with horses, to really understand the background of the person they're working with so they can assess if they're actually qualified in not only the human lens, but with the horses as well.
Hmm.
So there's that. The more hopeful answer, and that I really deeply appreciate with horses and people who have had traumatic backgrounds, is that there's something that we can really understand in each other.
Mm.
And so when we've done a lot of kind of those healing cycles, and we can support, for example, rescue horses to come into a healthier place within themselves and feel trusting and safe in their environment, they can become some of the most incredible teachers and guides because they're like, I know the dark. I've lived
Yeah.
in the dark. And I also know what it's like to move out of it, and I can help you get there.
Yeah. I think with people, so we're talking about horses being prey animals, and I think we think of humans as being predators. I'm not sure that that's who we are. I mean, that's how we behave, and we do have act as if we have power over everything. You know, in the Bible it says God gave man dominion over everything, but I don't think that's who we are. I think when you're talking about the beauty of the relationship with horses between themselves and between with people, that to me feels real, and I would imagine that doing your kind of work gives you a way to have relationships with not just horses, but everything else. Is that true?
I couldn't agree more. I often think of it that the language of the nervous system, the language of understanding what's happening in our body, is actually our mother tongue. And as we grow into the society that we live in, especially in the West, and I couldn't speak more to other cultures as much, but I know here there's a tremendous amount of forcing us into a certain side of what it means to be human. And as humans, we're actually omnivores. We're both predator and prey. And the horses invite us to explore a different kind of power that we hold as human beings, where very often in our world, there's a heavy emphasis on that predatory power, where
Yeah.
vulnerability is not
Hmm.
safe, it's used against us. And that non predatory power, horsepower, is the opposite. It's so encompassing and inclusive and safe for vulnerability. It's so connected to community. It's so, um, for the good of the herd, as we say.
Hmm.
And it has a tremendous value on having moments of ease and rest and support. And I love how the horses really invite us to spend more time there and become more balanced beings as humans,
Yeah.
where we can learn to be a little bit more horse-like and access more of that non-predatory power for the good of the herd, including ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. We are tribal and we do need the herd. And I think, when you look at Native Americans and their relationship with horses, and the Mongolians and their relationship with horses, it's like your horse is an extension of you. It's like a dog. Um, it's a relationship that's can even be more powerful than the human to human relationship. So I think having a relationship with nature in whatever way that that connects for you is a really, really wonderful thing. And I would imagine too that because of that authenticity that is required to be part of a prey animal connection, that a lot of shadow stuff would come up. So I would guess that people would often find themselves just feeling things and be like, oh my God, I don't know where that came from, because they just have permission. And I see you nodding, so tell me more about that.
100%. And so I think there's a physiological component that's completely outside of any kind of conscious awareness or processing that
Mm,
we might be doing,
hmm.
as well as the things that are being brought up and connections that are being made that maybe we weren't expecting to
Hmm.
happen. So 100%, the physiology piece is kind of neat because the horse's heart is 7 to 10 times the size of our own.
Wow.
So when we are near them, there's all kinds of neat research coming out about how that deeply impacts our own heart
Hmm.
and changes our heart rhythm,
Hmm.
our heart frequency. And so just being in the horse's vicinity starts to actually shift what's happening in our body and connecting us to this different aspect of heart connection within our own selves. So just that will bring things up to the surface. Just that
Yeah.
will shift things in sometimes uncomfortable, but also really beautiful and important ways. And that's part of why it can be such deeply powerful work on top of the authenticity building experiences with our
Yeah.
conscious awareness with them. So, you couple that with actually kind of gaining more self-awareness, gaining more um, connection with them. There's such a powerful motivation to have um, connection with the horse that it can pull people through the mud of whatever might be getting brought up. And it doesn't have to be about the story, although
Right.
of
Yeah.
course, the story can be shared. And I think there's a lot of power in that as well, and we don't have to get lost in the weeds. It can really be about the experience, what's happening in the moment, recognizing the connections that are being made, and having an opportunity to try something different.
Yeah. So who's the best candidate for horse therapy? Who should come?
So I'll just be also very transparent. I'm not a therapist. I do work with
Okay.
many therapists. So sometimes we call it horse therapy. Sometimes it's wellness with horses. Depends if the therapist is on site or not. It
Okay.
will be set up a little differently either way. But truly, the horses are the therapists.
Yeah.
So, it is, it's that. And even if we are doing, let's say, a team building experience, which we work with organizations, that kind of thing as well, we only want to work with organizations who are wanting to actually do authentic connection,
Mhm.
understanding, and healthy collaboration. Because if that's not what they truly want, they're not going to be happy with the results, because it's
Mhm.
going to bring up some of those truthful, deep, truthful pieces, even if it's not with the person's personal story, even though. I mean, I think everything's connected in life. To say it's personal or professional, it's putting us in two boxes that overlap more than we might think. But nonetheless, we can kind of frame it different ways, but the horses are always going to have that deeply therapeutic component, no matter what's going on. And who's the best person? I think it's honestly, and I know this is going to sound very vague, but it's anyone who is wanting to get unstuck
Mm.
and have deeply powerful transformational work. If you're
Is
not
it
looking for true transformational work, maybe not the time. And you don't have to rush it, it's not going to have to be like all at once, and it doesn't have to be too intense, but you also have to have that kind of commitment to wanting it and moving through the process.
so? Is there anybody who shouldn't do it?
Well, I think that there are people who would really need more experienced practitioners to have a safe experience. So someone
Oh,
who's maybe coming from like a highly um, activated state in their nervous system, right? If they're feeling a huge amount of hypervigilance,
okay.
if they're in crisis, you want to make sure that you're connecting with people who are really highly qualified and highly experienced, both with horses and humans. Um, because without the right kind of container, it could become an unsafe experience for people because it brings up so much. So if
Yeah.
you are going through a big moment and you don't, it's just like therapy, right? If you don't have the right therapist for what you're dealing with, it's not going to go well. But just like therapy and relationships, you can also recognize that if it didn't work as you wanted it to with one person, you can try someone else. And if you got a sense in your being, try to listen to that inner sense. If like you feel called or guided to work with a certain place or individual, that has validity too. It doesn't always have to be like, doing research and credentials. It can be what feels right, having a
Sure.
little conversation with someone and going, I feel like this is really important for me to at least try.
Mhm.
So if there's that sense of like this feels really right and important, even if I also feel scared, then I think that would be the best fit.
Okay. So love
Yeah.
your story. Love what you do. Can you tell us what you got coming up?
For sure. Yeah. So we have a couple of workshops coming up that people can see on our website. That's horsesensenorth.com. We have a public workshop to become more rooted in our power in healthy ways. We have a women's wellness workshop coming up. And we have other kinds of events and things that people can learn about if they sign up for a mailing list or kind of follow us on social media, any of those things. We just kind of roll out things as we are able to. We also run quite a few programs for first responders and military.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah, so that's kind of our biggest passion is serving those who serve others, and especially for me personally to kind of give back from my own experiences too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very passionate about serving that community. We have another program coming up in April. There may be a spot if someone's listening to this program, and if someone wants to sign up for those, there's an application form that they can fill out as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate what you do and for having me on your show.
Sure.